Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, and I want to isolate 5 things that I think can be better in Fallout 76. I've answered a lot of questions lately about the game, given off my impressions, alluded to some issues with the game as well as some positive aspects too, but I really want to go in on 5 things that stood out to me during my period of time with Fallout 76 that definitely need to be functioning or improved come the final launch of this game. Number 1, latency and hit detection. There were plenty of times I shot an enemy realistically within my range and the bullets would not register, or sometimes I would get hit and my character would grunt but you wouldn't see a shot come from the enemy, or sometimes I would swing my golf club, you wouldn't hear any audio feedback but you'd see the health bar go down. This simply cannot be a thing. It feels like incredibly dated tech in that regard, and it also made it where there was no audio feedback. I had no idea when I was making contact with the enemy or when he was contacting me. And furthermore, it kind of broke the immersion when I take a shot at an enemy and it just wouldn't register even though he was like 100 meters from me, like a realistic distance to take someone out from. And this was happening all over the place at the demo until I got used to the gameplay systems and then decided to really close my distance before I took any shots, which then in turn highlighted some of the AI issues where I noticed, wow, they barely move when they're gonna shoot at me. This was an issue I never even thought of with Fallout 76 on how latency and lag could actually be an issue because it's a largely online game. So I'm hoping Bethesda does sort that out. It wasn't ridiculous, but there were moments where it just totally broke me out of my zone because I just didn't really understand why my bullets weren't registering. Remind me of the Call of Duty days, man. Jeez. Number 2 was during the Horde mode event that I've talked about a couple of times where I faced a wave of Protectrons. I feel that the spawning could have been better. After the first wave of Protectrons got wiped out, it took a while for the second waves to come in, whether it's because they move incredibly slow or because the game wasn't spawning it, I'm not sure, but there was a good 2-minute waiting period as we just stood there hoping that the Protectrons would make their way in. I think it's because a lot's going on in these game worlds, and so sometimes these enemies get hooked on things or they don't make it there in time properly, or maybe they spawn a little too far. But what happened was it broke the flow of the event. The first wave, in and out real fast. It was fun. But then the second wave, there was this period of time and awkwardness, and it turned out that the third wave was right behind them, so it almost was like the game stacked itself and the wave ended in a very strange order. Overall, it didn't set a good first impression for an event in the game and how these things dynamically happen, that the second it does go on, the game kind of broke. Number 3, I talked about this during my solo play versus online play discussion video. There needs to be a better balancing of damage for the solo player. Now I know it's easier said than done, but I think there should be a system implemented, at least in the terms of a concept, that when the game registers the player is in a group, there are different damage multipliers based off your weapons, but also just how many people are in your group versus when you're by yourself. Up the damage for that solo player, because there were times where I was facing enemies of my level and it just wasn't getting the job done, or enemies a level or 2 higher, which is where we really encountered issues. Meanwhile, when I was in a group, they die in 2 shots. So it seemed like there was a difference in damage done, but I feel like the solo player needs to be upped a little bit because there are going to be thousands and thousands of people who want to play by themselves. I know the game is geared towards online play, but solo play absolutely is an option, and Bethesda should work to gear the games towards both audiences. It's very well possible because the game structurally, in the terms of exploration, gathering quests, getting involved in the world, can work for both sides, but rather the damage output and gameplay mechanics as a whole are what struggle for the solo player. So I'd like to see some fine tuning for that. It's something that I feel can be easily remedied down the line. Number 4, the FPS/performance. It was not good during this demo. I remember being super concerned when I walked in the room because there were 2 waves of demos for Fallout 76. I was in the second wave, but I was watching the first wave play and I was like, oh boy, I'm watching every single TV in here, and there were dozens of them skip around every 15 seconds. And I thought, wow, this is not performing well. Now, Bethesda did confirm to us that this was an older build. They're optimizing. It's going to be better. This build was more focused on the area around Vault 76, where once you got further from the vault, it started to bog down, but still, when we're so close to launch, this is like what I said with the beta, we are almost there. It's really not comforting to see the game struggle to run so much. I know people jokingly call them Bugthesda because their games can be a little laggy, a little buggy, but ultimately I expected a little bit better on that front. This item on the list, out of everything, I feel needs the most to be addressed because that's something that just impacts all levels of the gameplay. Exploration, shooting, looting, PvP. All of it gets hurt when you're lagging about. And this is on an Xbox, which Bethesda Game Studios games have notoriously ran better on compared to PlayStation, where that's always been a nightmare for Bethesda Game Studios. So if it's not running well on an Xbox, then what about the PlayStation side of things? It's rather concerning. Number 5, making more sense of the robots slash quest givers. There was a moment towards the end of my demo with Fallout 76 where I discovered a hunting lodge. I went into the basement and I found a big terminal setup which was designed to give you hunting quests. It told me to go out and kill Yaoguais, Ragstads, what have you. And while it was cool in the terms of location, quest idea, and so on, I wasn't a fan of how it was delivered to the player because it was exactly what I was afraid of, which is this doesn't make sense. Why is there this big computer downstairs and a hunting lodge? How did this exactly happen? I feel like in that part of the game, it might have made more sense to find a note. Maybe a legendary hunter was trying to complete the ultimate hunt and you have picked up where he has left off. Something like that would have made much more sense than a terminal all of a sudden giving it to you. And this terminal I discovered was just about half an hour after I had talked to another terminal, looked exactly the same, that was apparently the mayor of Grafton. And at first it was cool because it reminded me of John Henry Eden from Fallout 3 and I went, wow, this is actually awesome. But once you see that 2 times in a row, it got me worried about how these quest givers are going to be doled out and how a lot of them are going to look the same, at least technology-wise. Regardless, this is something I can only hope for at this point because the game's practically done. That doesn't become an issue. But overall, these are 5 things that during my time with the game I felt could have been better with Fallout 76, and I do hope that Bethesda improves all this stuff down the line, especially performance. That was something that I found rather unacceptable, even if this was a split-off build just for people like myself who got to go to this event and play it. Anyways, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what I felt had to improve in the comments down below, so do fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook. Those links are in the description down below, along with my Patreon. Do consider supporting that as it fuels all the content we create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.